So at a certain point, the question becomes, what is the federal government and the Department of Fisheries and Oceans doing at this time to address the issues that have arisen in the Indigenous fishery locally and around the province, and to make some movement on the Marshall decision that took place in 1999 regarding the right for Indigenous fishers to have a moderate livelihood fishery? To try to shed some light on some of these issues, I spoke to Cape Breton-Canso Member of Parliament Mike Kelloway. He is one of several MPs that took part in an emergency debate in the House of Commons earlier in October to try to deal with the fishery issues that have been taking place among Canada's Indigenous communities. I spoke to Mr. Kelloway via Zoom. Here are his thoughts on the issue and what can happen going forward. Have you had conversation with officials with Bernadette? Can you give me a sense on just what you feel about all of this and where we can go from here on it?
For sure, and thanks again for having me, Adam. And I'll just go back a bit in time in kind of establish kind of the context of myself working with the many fishing associations and the First Nations communities over the past year, and in particular since March, because of COVID. I accelerated a lot of different discussions with the fishing associations and First Nations communities on a whole host of things. In particular, the fisheries announcements that were made in relation to COVID, the fishing harvester grant, and subsequently many others that came from it. That was around the $500 million announcement. Largely, that had to do with the complete immersion on my part and my staff's part of getting to know as much as we could very quickly of the fishery file from a whole host of facets. So we worked very closely with First Nations communities, the three in our riding, and the fishing associations from Canso to Glace Bay to Arishat to Shetty Camp, in putting together real solid ideas and plans on measures that would help fishers and the fishing sector, not just in our riding, but Atlantic Canada. And lo and behold, the work we did together was largely adopted by the minister and then cabinet. And it really is something that is a Cape Breton-Canso solution that emanated from fishers, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous, to Ottawa, that now is a $500 million investment in the fishery in Atlantic Canada and in a certain degree on the West Coast. Now, why do I bring that up? I bring that up because for me, before politics and now during politics, everything is about relationships and about knowing your files. And so that immersion has provided me, by no means am I an expert, not even close on the fishery, but I've learned a lot over the past 10 months. And so I think that positioned myself and my office well to continue those discussions with the fishing associations, for example, in Richmond County, who have a strong leadership there, and Gord McDonald and Carla Sampson and others, and also with Chief Wilbur Marshall. So over the past number of weeks, past couple of months really, I know I've met with Wilbur. I meet with the fishing associations quite a lot to kind of get a sense of where do we go from here, identifying the challenges on both sides and bringing that to the minister. So, for example, I took part in the fishing debate, emergency debate 2 Mondays ago. And what I was trying to do there, Adam, is a couple of things. Number one, the Supreme Court in 1999 rendered their decision on moderate livelihood in terms of it being identified. And then it was also reaffirmed later on. And a lot of work has been done under the Marshall decision, not under moderate livelihood, but in other aspects of ensuring that Marshall communities have investment in the fishery, whether it be with fishing boats or fishing apparel, PPE, and so forth and so on. So a lot has been done since 1999, and a lot has not been done. And a lot of that has to do with the federal government. A lot of that has to do with, working in collaboration, nation to nation, with KMK. And a lot of times when you have negotiations, there's ups and there's downs, and there's been ups and downs over the 21 years. But what I've done is reach out to the Prime Minister, I've written a very detailed letter on the situation, and I've also debated it, as I mentioned, in the House. And nation-to-nation negotiation is essential here between the government of Canada and the Mi'kmaq. But also, I've said this publicly, is that industry needs a place at another table to be able to work with government and the Mi'kmaq Nation to provide ideas, suggestions, opportunities, and things of that nature. And I think that can be accomplished, and I think that's, at least as an MP, that's what I'm pushing for with Minister Jordan. I think it's essential, and everyone can agree on this. The actions of a few in West Pubnico and Digby were terrible. They were criminal. They were racist. But that was not indicative of the fishers that I know in Cape Breton-Canso. The fishers that I know in Cape Breton-Canso want to be a part of the solution. They want to work with the Mi'kmaq. They want to work with Chief and Council and Buck and Keg, or Politek, sorry, and Buck and Keg and Wakaba. So I think that we have more in common than we do that we have in differences. But right now, tensions are high. There's no doubt about that. So what I'm trying to do is, in my role, is to take down the tension a bit and allow Minister Jordan to meet with First Nations leadership and industry to come up with the best possible solution that we can for a couple of things: for the conservation of the species, for the sustainability of the species. And it's so important. And First Nations understand that, fishers understand that, and DFO understands that. So what we need to do is continue to de-escalate the hotness of this. And we need to look at those key pillars, because regardless if there is overfishing on the part of non-Indigenous fishers, Indigenous fishers, the reality is that if there's no lobster, there is no industry. So we got to look together at, certainly concepts, and we need to explore them around co-management and due diligence in terms of oversight. These are places that we need to get to, and we need to get there sooner than later. But let me be I'm unequivocal about this. There is no room for racism. There is no room for violence. We are a country of laws. We are not a country of men and women. We are a country of laws, and we need to follow them through. So I've been pretty clear, and I've been very, very active on the file, and I appreciate the leadership of both sides on this. But we need to de-escalate the rhetoric, the hotness of the dialogue, and we need to continue the dialogue right away. And Adam, it is an amazingly powerful time. We have fishers that are both the Indigenous and non-Indigenous that have worked together for years. We see tensions there, but I see because I'm listening, and every day, including Saturday and Sunday, we're meeting with the different groups to continue the dialogue. And certainly I'm not part of the negotiations, but what I am is someone that understands that when in Cape Breton-Canso we're divided, that leads to less results. When we're connected and we work together, good things can happen.
I want to pick up on a couple of points that you made there, and just more recently, I wanted to ask you about the discussions that you've mentioned that you will be having with leadership over the weekend. Can you give me a sense of who exactly you'll be talking to and what you'll be talking about during those meetings? Is that something you can share with us today?
Adam, I'm meeting consistently with those associations. So, for example, the Fishing Association in Richmond with Carla Sampson, Gordon McDonald, Chief Wilbur, not all together at separate times. and other associations in Cape Breton-Canso. So, for example, what I've been doing is ensuring that we try to connect the dots as an MP. So what I do, and what I did last Thursday, was I brought the Minister of Fisheries via Zoom to meet with the Fishing Association in Richmond to provide an update on what's happening and what's going on to the best of our ability, because negotiations most times, excuse me, are confidential and there's cabinet confidentiality. But also reaching out to other ministers, Adam, because certainly Bernadette is the lead on this, but also through her reaching out to other ministers, whether they be Indigenous ministers, Mark Miller or Callan Bennett, or other ministers to bring to the forefront what's happening and our own perspective on what may be the best path forward. So it is consistent dialogue with those same groups over and over again, because this is a file you can't leave. And I'm not leaving the file. I'm at the forefront of it and will continue to be. And, I can't say what I say in meetings with individuals, but I will say that this resource is precious to us all. And it's not infinite. Meaning that it's a resource that if we're not careful, it can be damaged in a serious way. At the same point, we are, the Premier has said this, is that we're all treaty people. So what that means is that we need to look at that Supreme Court ruling and understand it's a Supreme Court ruling. So together, we have to unpack that. And the First Nations have, it is very, very sacrosanct, as rights would be to anyone. So going into that, we need to know that the Supreme Court ruling was not endorsed once, but twice. And again, that needs to be part of the discussion with the greater groups. While at the same time, we have to understand that the resource needs to be backed by science, conservation, and sustainability. And that's a we discussion. That's a we discussion. Because as we all know, fishing is not just a job. Fishing's a way of life. It's a part of our culture. It's part of all of our cultures. Mi'kmaq, Acadian, English, Basque. So we have a lot to stake on this together. So most of my days on this, quite frankly, are reaching out to the minister directly on this to provide the intel that I'm getting, the sides that I'm getting, the different sides, because there are, but also try to look for commonalities to build upon dialogue and give that back to her.
And one of the main reasons that we wanted to have you on Telile 24/7 to address this is because you got to participate directly in a parliamentary debate on the Indigenous fishery. And I wanted to get a sense from you in terms of the decision makers and in terms of decision makers across Canada, not just in Atlantic Canada. What's the tone of the discussion right now? How did you feel that particular debate went? And was that a conversation that can be built on?
I think from my standpoint as an MP, I got to what they call the late show, which was 12:30 in the morning, and I got to address questions from opposition on my opening remarks. Look, the MPs. I can only speak actually on behalf of myself and the MPs that I know that are working on this file pretty diligently in their own respective communities. But look, there isn't an MP, and I would say on any side of the equation, that would not condemn violence and racism, whether that is a Tory in New Brunswick or Quebec or wherever the case may be. There's a genuine interest in an effort, a humongous effort on the part of MPs to meet with their constituents in the fishery sector to ensure that we get to a very, very good place quickly, whether that be a short-term gap to address a long-term need or address the long-term solution now. But number one, all MPs are in agreement. Racism and violence are a no-go zone, illegal and immoral. But I also think, too, it's easy to take the actions of a few and parlay it into an industry that may be deemed as not open. And my experience has been, and my family, my mother's family are all fishers, is that they're good men and women who want the best solution possible. So during my debate, I brought up that the Marshall decision is entrenched in terms of the moderate livelihood being put out there by the Supreme Court. Needs to be unpacked, but being put out there, affirmed twice. Talked about the importance of the federal government in ensuring that significant investments in the fishery and Indigenous communities, Marshall communities, were made, and quite a lot of money has been put into those communities, and rightly so. But I also talked about the industry, and the industry that I know. And the industry that I know are strong men and women who, and Cape Breton-Canso, who do not want to see, and just do not want to see anything like what happened in West Pimlico and Digby. So part of that was establishing the narrative of, it's easy in this world to go black hat, white hat, left, right, but there's a huge middle here. And I think my point was, the Indigenous communities that I serve are strong and caring, and also very focused on the moderate livelihood. And the industries that I serve and the FLAs that I work with are equal to that. And also establishing the fact that when we say de-escalation of dialogue, those are not 50 cent words. Rather, that is taking the dialogue, the hotness of the dialogue down, and continuing the dialogue. Negotiations are seldom quick. But if we bring that down, which I think we're doing to some degree, that's essential. Conservation, in my speech, Adam, it's a shared priority. It's a shared priority. I haven't met a single person in DFO who doesn't say conservation is not the top tier priority. I've not met anyone in industry that has said that. I have not met anyone in the First Nations communities that have said that. So if we want to see this resource conserved for generations to come, we know we have that in common. So the idea here is that we're all in this together, but we have to start acting like that. Because I can say it, and I can bring people together to talk about it, but we need to approach it that way. We need to get a foothold, and we need to get it quickly. And my job is to ensure that we keep that escalation. That, well, there hasn't been really any per se. There have been some instances where one might categorize that, but we need to keep it down to allow the men and women on all sides of this to get to a place that more than likely will, with like any great negotiations, requires a bit of water in the wine. And that's my hope.
Well, I wanted to wrap this up, Mike, by asking you a bit about the key players in keeping the dialogue going and bringing the walls down. And in particular, I wanted to ask you about your caucus colleague, the Minister of Fisheries, Bernadette Jordan. She's also a Nova Scotia MP. She's on the South Shore and a two-term MP, re-elected last year in 2019. She'd already served in the Trudeau cabinet as the Minister of Rural Development, which was the first time that such a ministry had been set up anywhere. Yeah. She has received different reviews from different people, some folks thinking that she is gone in and been able to keep that dialogue going. You mentioned a couple of instances that you've seen personally. Some criticism from others in not acting fast enough when the height of the Sabanactity fishery issues were coming to a head in September and October. What is your characterization of Minister Jordan's approach? And in particular, do you feel that she's been open to listening to your concerns and your views on all of this?
She has been exceptionally receptive to those. When I've asked for a meeting with a fishing association, because I think it's key, she's made it happen. So she's been very open, very collaborative with me. And quite frankly, we've had some interesting discussions because your viewers will know, I believe, that I do speak my mind, but I don't do it half-cocked. I get my information from the grassroots. I educate myself, and then I provide solutions, not that are my Kelloway solutions, but First Nation solutions or indigenous or industry solutions, constituency solutions, economic solutions, social solutions, cultural solutions that are basically based inherently in a deep way from constituents. So for me, my experience has been one where she has demonstrated an immense overture to meet with me, discuss what's going on, and also for me to provide the opportunities for solutions that I hear from all sides of the equation. And many of them sometimes are the same, and some of the times they're very different. But that's my role, is to provide that leadership, to provide that transparency, to be direct, because that's why I was elected. In terms of how there are those that, as you said, say she's done a good job. There are those that would say she has the job that she's done has been not up to snuff from the opinions of those that would share those opinions. Let me say this. Someone said that crises reveals character. So this past year, and I'm not being political here because I would say the same for provincial MPs or provincial premiers, so like Doug Ford and others, that crisis reveals character. And I think that the people of Canada, the people of her riding, the people of my riding would look at that and go, crisis reveals character. Look at COVID. Look how the country and the provinces have responded. Have the provinces got it right? Not 100% of the time? No. Has the federal government got things right 100% of the time? No. But you can say that all premiers and the federal government have come to the table to address the most pressing pandemic in 100 years in a compassionate, very direct way. Now, why do I bring that up? I bring that up because here's Bernadette Jordan. She's a minister of fisheries. Within the first year, she's dealing with COVID, and she's dealing with an issue that's been on the radar for the past 20 years prior to her becoming MP and minister. And I can tell you that she, prior to COVID, was meeting with the same group she's meeting with now to try to find the best possible solution and with the best possible processes in place. But she's not advertising that. She's not out there saying, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. She's out there with the quiet diplomacy. So my thought is sometimes when you can't come out and say, these are happening, it certainly is a disadvantage for her. But I think I know the work she's doing. I know it's not easy. I know, sometimes I may have a difference in opinion with her. But I can tell you categorically, as someone who represents a riding that has so much fishery, she gets it. She's working towards trying to bring groups together to find common bonds that will lead to solutions that will ultimately need to be elements of compromise. That's not an easy job. It's not an easy job. So I would say she is working hard. She is doing her best. She's been a great colleague for me to be direct, to agree to disagree. And that's the stuff that probably many wouldn't see, but now you're hearing now. And she's under no illusions that this is a difficult position. But as the first, I believe, minister representing a Nova Scotia electoral district, female minister, we've had others that were from Cape Breton or Cape Breton-Canso, but represented a riding in Ontario, that Flora MacDonald, that were ministers. But somebody that's representing a Nova Scotia constituency and being the first minister, I think that it's a difficult position to be in. It's a difficult file to be in, but I think she's doing what she can with the tools that she has in the situation that has confronted her. And again, crisis reveals leadership. My experience has been, if I call her, she's there. If I ask her to come to a meeting, she's there. I'm working on another one with another fishing association, and I know that she'll come to that. And they're not just platitude meetings, they're discussions. So leadership's tough. Leadership is tough. I've taught leadership at the University of Calgary. My master's is in leadership. I tried to demonstrate it. It's not easy. It's not an episode of The West Wing where everything works out in the end in 33 minutes. Sometimes it requires quiet diplomacy. Sometimes it requires direct diplomacy. Sometimes it is going one way and turns out another. With the moderate livelihood discussion, and I don't know this to be a fact, I'm just making an assumption, but like most negotiations over 20 years, I'm sure there were ups and downs and assumptions made and agreements almost in place. And here we are. So what are we going to do about it? So what we're going to do about it is continue to press what we think are the right buttons of direct diplomacy, and also arguments around the fact that science is essential, conservation is essential, sustainability is essential, and we don't have 21 years. I would say we don't have 2 years. I would say we need to get this right now. And that's what we're working on.
And that seems like a good tone on which to wrap up, Mike. This is, of course, a difficult issue. Some would say it has as many moving parts as an actual live lobster. We do appreciate you giving us some time this morning and helping us to sort all this out. Thanks again for joining us on Telile 24/7 today.
Adam, thank you. And it's always great to be on Telile. It's one of my favorite channels. I watch it all the time. So thank you.